everyone. My name is Lindsay Crossan with BCC Research. I would like to thank you for joining us today for our Technology Transfer exclusive webinar with Harvard University's Director of Business Development, Jen Rice, and BCC Research's CEO, Ann Jacoby. Before we begin today, just a couple of housekeeping items with our WebEx platform. We will be recording today's presentation and our phone lines are on mute. So participants, if you have any questions for Jen, please send them in via chat. The chat feature can be found at the bottom of your screen, and it looks like a little thought bubble. When you're sending those questions in, please be sure you're sending them directly to the host, so this way I can read them for Jen at the end of the presentation. We will be holding those questions, but send them in as they come to you so we can be sure we have time to get that answered. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann to get us started today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for a widely anticipated BCC event, one that has been on our mind for, I would say about a year now. So we're absolutely thrilled to be presenting to our Tech Transfer members today. We recently actually returned from the autumn conference, as I know many of you did, in Austin, Texas, and had an outstanding time. And we were able to meet so many of our members face-to-face and share with them this event today, as well as welcome several new members to BCC Research, many of which are on this call today also. So our hope is that y'all enjoy the presentation and leave with a better overall understanding of how you can best engage your student community, graduate students, postdoc researchers, with the overall missions of your respective offices. So we have a lot to cover today, and without further ado, I would like to go ahead and introduce Jen Rice, the Director of Business Development at Harvard's Tech Transfer Office.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ann and Lindsay and BCC Research for giving me this opportunity to talk about what we've been doing here at the Harvard Office of Technology Development. So I am a director of business development here, and our office oversees the university-wide research translational activities here at Harvard, and I've been here for almost 5 years now. Before that, I was at the University of Illinois in their tech transfer office, and before that, I was a grad student. And as I'm sure many of you in the audience know, there's a growing demand for graduate students and postdocs to get experience beyond the bench. And as a grad student, I benefited immensely from internship opportunities in the Illinois Tech Transfer Office. And when I came here to Harvard, my mission was to be able to provide something similar. And so I'll expand upon that in today's webinar. So the mission at the Harvard OTD is, I'm sure, not much different from many of your office's mission, which is to facilitate the transfer of cutting-edge Harvard innovations from the lab to the public. And how we think about that activity is really outlined here in the slide, which is taking an idea and moving it from conceptualization to partnership. So typically, our faculty members will engage with our office, will learn about the research going on in their labs, and will determine whether there may or may not be some potential intellectual property to protect. And as we have those discussions, it serves as a reality check for both our office and the PIs on whether this idea really has commercial potential. And if we think that there is potential there, then obviously we'll engage our IP firms and protect that intellectual property. The next step, which again, none of this might be so different from you, is to articulate what the opportunity is to our potential external partners. And so what that might look like is understanding what the landscape is for potential licensees or potential partners, and to do this kind of due diligence on what those partners might look like, we use resources like BCC. So I've been using BCC reports for my whole tech transfer career so far, and they really help me understand the landscape of the people in the space or operating in the space, and also potential other avenues for how one might commercialize a project. And then with that information, we then might do some outreach to those potential partners and try and, again, articulate the opportunities that we have. And this whole process is iterative. The feedback we might get from a partner might have us rethinking what our value proposition is, redefining that, that opportunity, and again, marketing it in a different way. And then, of course, the end goal is always to enter into a license agreement, potentially gain some industry-sponsored research, or start a new co. So this is just some statistics that you can find on our website about the overall size of our office and the activities that we have. So in the OTD, we see close to 500 invention disclosures every year. This is covering both the life sciences and the physical sciences. We file over 200 patent applications, and then we do a number of licenses and industry-sponsored research agreements. I will say that one of the more unique features of this office, perhaps compared to some other offices, is that we do manage industry-sponsored research. In my old office, it was just managing the IP portfolio, and so having the access to industry-sponsored research broadens the materials and projects that we can market for partnering to industry. So like I mentioned in my opening comments, when I came to Harvard, we did not have a mechanism to engage with the graduate students and postdocs here. And I thought that was really a missed opportunity because, you're at an amazing institution, the caliber and the scientific expertise that can be found amongst the student population is so great. And not only that, but the students and the postdocs have a real interest and are eager to identify opportunities to expand their skill set. And, there's a lot of press and publications that have been coming out in the past 5-10 years about how there has been this shift in the overall career trajectories for a lot of science PhDs and postdocs. And really, the faculty job is now considered an alternative career. And so the idea was to tap into this student body and see if there was a way that they could help us do our due diligence here for the projects that we were hoping to translate from the lab to the public. So we launched this Business Development Fellowship Program, which is an opportunity for graduate students and postdocs to participate in the activities that we do here, doing due diligence on existing projects and potential new projects. And when I say projects, I use that word instead of IP because, again, we're talking about potential industry-sponsored research projects, but also potential IP portfolio. And it's a part-time program. Our fellows join for 1 year, and they work approximately 5 hours a week remotely. So, maybe they set up an experiment in lab, or they're there in the evening, and they can work on our projects, on the weekends or in the evenings. And really, they help us with a variety of things. So I've listed some here as examples. Sometimes they help us analyze the commercialization potential of a technology. They might help us understand or map the competitive landscape. They might help us brainstorm around potential commercial applications for early stage inventions. And then they would also help outline effective marketing strategies and identify potential licensees. And really, as part of our training for the fellows, we encourage them to use our library and the resources that our libraries provide, specifically the business school library. And one of those resources is the BCC reports. And so we've found those, again, incredibly useful for these types of activities. So what was happening as we launched this program is that we were getting an incredible demand from the student and trainee body. So basically, we would have, upwards of 50 to 60 applications to the program, and we only had 8 spots. And so, it wasn't that any one of those students who we didn't select to participate in the program wasn't qualified. It was just that we didn't feel comfortable engaging a larger body of fellows we wanted to be conscious about giving them enough work and making sure that they had a cohesive group that could work together. And so what would happen is we would have to turn down a number of really talented students, postdocs, who could have benefited from an internship. And a number of them were asking, well, can I volunteer or can I at least attend your training? And so that's really actually where this idea for a boot camp was born. So the boot camp is a 2-day workshop designed to teach the skills that we use here in our office to assess early stage innovations and communicate value propositions to external parties. And the boot camp is open to graduate students and postdocs who don't necessarily either want to participate in our internship or have been declined an opportunity to participate in our internship, but really just want an understanding of what this type of activity looks like. And it could also be useful for their own personal lab experience. So, they might have translational projects that they are interested in turning into new codes or licensing opportunities. And this workshop is designed to help them think about how to do that as well. So this is an image from our flyer that we have. Again, I just mentioned it's open to our entire community. They don't have to be interested in the internship, so anyone can apply. But it also serves 2 purposes, the second purpose being that it is a training for our intern class. And so we're now going to be putting on our 3rd boot camp this May. But our first one went really well, and our second one went even better. And we were fortunate enough to have one of the BCC analysts at our second event come and talk to the students about how to think about markets and defining a market opportunity, which they then used to assess a case, an example case that they were given at the beginning of the workshop. And so you can see here on this slide that some of the comments from the students were about getting hands-on experience with real-world examples and how that was very beneficial to them. So what do we think is important for the students to get out of this boot camp? We hope that they'll understand a broader or develop a broader skill set than the scientific skill set that they're building in their research training. So understanding what commercial organizations might be looking for or thinking about when they do science. We want to encourage them to think more translationally. So it's very easy to get focused on the scientific details of your project and lose the broader picture, or even lose sight of how your research could impact people in the real world. We want them to be able to expand their network and start building networking skills. And so the way the workshop is structured is that they're positioned at tables of with 5 to 6 other students. So other students who share an interest in learning more about technology commercialization. And they're starting to network and build their network that will last them into the future. We also, as part of the boot camp, provide a career panel, so bringing in people who have previously interned in our office to show them where these skills could help them land jobs. And it's been, obviously, it's been a wide variety of different types of jobs that our former interns have landed, just because of the nature of tech transfer. You get exposure to marketing, to IP law, to consulting questions. And so really our students are going off and doing all of those different things. And then, I think these last couple bullets are maybe a little redundant, but again, kind of understanding just in general how and why your research matters and how it can impact others. So the boot camp that we structured is outlined as follows. And it was really meant to reflect how we think about diligencing projects here at OTD. So the first is, of course, understanding what the technology is. And so we have a session on just the overall history of tech transfer and what our mission is here at Harvard and how we go about our functions. But then the real, I think, meat of the course kicks off with this idea of defining the value proposition. So very often our faculty members will come to us with a really amazing scientific paper, maybe within Nature or Science, and they say, do I need to file a patent on this paper? And it's a true scientific paper that's not really talking about the commercial opportunities, and it might not even be very obvious where the commercial opportunities are. And so we need to work with them to be creative about how to extract the translational value from those scientific manuscripts. And so part of that is the ability to first understand what the technology is and then figure out whether there is a market that technology would fit into. And this is kind of understanding the technology, brainstorming around potential applications for that technology, and then looking at the markets for each of those applications is where BCC research and other marketing types of information have helped us articulate what that value proposition might be and whether or not it's worth either protecting and or pursuing further for marketing purposes. And then, of course, we have a session on intellectual property so that everyone understands what is and what is not patentable. We also, once I think, again, because we manage industry-sponsored research, it doesn't necessarily need to be IP, but whether there's IP or not, there's always a value proposition to communicate. And so we have a session on how do we articulate what that value proposition is to our potential licensees or industry sponsors. Then the next session is getting real-world feedback or real-time feedback, I guess, on how effective your communication to the outside partners has been. And so for that, actually, we have a session that we've called Guppy Tank Junior. And the Guppy Tank Junior event is where we set up a series of panelists from the VC community and industry community. And what happens in this is that the students will write a non-confidential summary, get up and speak to the the panelists share what they're trying to articulate the value proposition is and get real-time feedback on how that summary, how effective that summary was. Next, we talk about how the different models by which we can engage industry through contracts. So, the structure of a licensing deal or an industry-sponsored research agreement, or maybe a combination of both, and what those different agreements provide. And then we have the last two sessions get more towards if you decide that your technology is more suitable for spinning out into a new co, how do you develop a business plan and what are some elements of an investor pitch? And then the boot camp kind of wraps up with talking, again, there's a career panel, so what can you do with these skills that you've learned in the workshop? And, and then there's also a session on trying to tell people what the opportunity is for our internship program. So the goals I've outlined here on how we think about the goals for the boot camp, and I encourage you guys in the audience to think about the goals that would be most relevant to your own communities. But I think from our perspective, the goals of the boot camp and the fellowship, the internship opportunity, are to increase our bandwidth, spread a good name about our office amongst the research community, so creating some ambassadors for our office to make sure that the scientific community feels comfortable engaging with us, talking about their research, thinking translationally, encouraging entrepreneurship. So again, kind of putting the power into the students' hands about how to think translationally. Obviously, just generally training the student community in the activities that we do will be helpful if in the future they want to engage with us or need to engage with us. Also building the network, having both the boot camp alums and the fellows alums has been helpful to our office in downstream things. So one of our interns went on to be a director of business development within a company, and that was we were able to talk about potential licensing opportunities through that connection. And then it reminds the university leadership that our office is also aware of the educational mission of the university, and that we're interested too as a tech transfer office in providing those educational resources. And then, the students, I hope, benefit as well by gaining exposure to alternative careers, increasing their skill set, expanding their resume, being more competitive for other opportunities within our ecosystem, and expanding their own networks. So this is the agenda that we had last year, again, talking about the different sessions that I outlined. And, I just had some data, too, on how it went in the first year and the second year. So as we've been doing this year to year and gaining more visibility, we've had an increased number in applications, and we're always trying to make the boot camp better. And so we've, tried to improve our branding, opening up the boot camp to a wider audience. The word of mouth has been really been helping boost our visibility. And so we've seen an increased number of applicants in the first 2 years that we ran this. Just by nature of our office in Harvard, we tend to hit more life sciences students than physical sciences students, but we're trying to even this out in the years to come. Most people thought that the workshop was was excellent, which was good, and this number of the excellent rating increased in our second year. And then we asked them about the length of the boot camp. So 2 days seemed good for most people. Most of them found it useful. This is especially applicable to the second year that we ran it. They really enjoyed doing the group work, so working on a real-world case with the students at their table. And then I think that the pace or the amount of content that was in the 2 days seems to be appropriate for the audience. And then interestingly, we asked them, like, why were you interested in applying for this boot camp? And this is something that you can take into consideration if you decide to plan a boot camp of your own. But most people were interested in business development or just alternative careers in general. And so I think that this kind of event gave them nice exposure to the different aspects that alternative careers might touch upon.
Hi, Jen. It's Anne. I actually have a question about this piece of it.
Sure.
And one of the questions I have is, so I understand I feel like I understand the camp and the mission and so well. And my question, just from listening to you and from hearing the feedback of people who have attended it, and the idea of how to define the value proposition for these students and recognize where, those technologies will make the greatest impact. My question is more aligned with, do you see an increase? So they're done with the workshop. They've gone back to their lives as students post-grad, wherever they fall in the spectrum. Do you see, one of the feedback pieces I took home from Autumn was just their stretch for resources and bodies, right? And so this event was very interesting to them to see if perhaps, they would see more traffic in their office and the students would become more of a piece of the fabric. Do you see that happening within your office, where they're coming back to the office, or they're actually putting these ideas and thoughts to use and collaborating with the tech transfer office there?
Yeah, definitely. So we've had a number of boot camp participants reach out to us after the boot camp was over, wanting to talk more about their research, and if after having gone through the boot camp, thinking about how their research maybe is now at a stage in which they should engage with OTD. So I think it's been really helpful on that front. I would also say that just having the flyers up about the boot camp has also stimulated some interest from the community. So even if there are people who can't attend the boot camp, they say, oh, what is the Office of Technology Development do? And then they reach out because they see those flyers. So it has been very effective on that front.
That's great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this is, I think I mentioned, I think that the boot camp has been an iterative process as well, and so we're constantly trying to expand upon what the participants have thought we've done well and improve what they've thought that we can improve. And so one of the things I really liked was getting this real-time feedback from our quote-unquote Guppy Tank Junior panel, which again is just a panel of industry and venture capitalist experts who help comment on the effectiveness of, for example, a non-confidential summary or a pitch. They really enjoyed seeing real-world examples of how the technology commercialization process has worked out for different innovations coming out of Harvard. And then they liked the opportunity to practice the concepts they were learning in the workshop on a specific real example case in a group and receiving feedback throughout that process. The things that they said that we could have improved on, this is specifically for the most recent boot camp that we held, were providing more networking opportunities with speakers and participants, and working on a more interactive workshop component related to intellectual property. So these are just some pictures from the event. And with that, I will end.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was fantastic. I think that we will go ahead and, Lindsay, do you want to go ahead and take it from here relative to questions from the attendees today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen, for all that really great, insightful information on the successes that you have had. So we've had a few questions come in. As we are going through these questions, if there are any other participants that have questions, send them in via chat. We still have some time to get them answered for you. And just to be clear, these questions do come in and they are confidential. I just ask the question and don't share your name. So feel free to ask that question. The first question that we have for you, Jen, is how do you keep current in changes in company focuses and product evolutions?
I'm sorry, can you actually repeat that question?
Sure. How do you keep current in changes in company focuses and product evolutions?
So I think I'm not entirely clear on maybe what component of that question that the audience member was trying to ask, but I think maybe they were trying to get at the evolving nature of what companies are seeking in with partners. So, their areas of interest are always changing. And so I guess the way that, we manage that within the office is staying in close contact with our primary points of contact within different companies, staying up to date on their areas of interest. If we send out, for example, a technology to a company that we previously knew was interested in that space, and they come back and they say, oh, we're no longer interested in that space, we might use that opportunity to re-engage with that company more broadly and find out how their areas of interest have adjusted.
Thank you. And yes, there was a follow-up as you were starting to explain that that's exactly what they were looking for. So thank you.
Yes, great.
How many fellows do you hire per year? Or do they work on a project basis after they finish boot camp training?
Yeah, so we have a fellows class of around 8 to 10 that support our activities in both the life sciences and the physical sciences. And if you can remember, the number of invention disclosures that we're receiving in a given year is around 450. So it's a small class size, and we could probably use more fellows, but the limiting reagent there is kind of the ability to assign work. So, of course, there's 7 directors in our office, and we have a number of associates, and really the gateway to getting work to fellows is one of us, and so that can be a barrier sometimes, is that if there's too many fellows, it's hard to coordinate assignment of a variety of projects to them. So that's typically what limits the number of fellows we have. The second part of that question, can you remind me of it?
Do they work on a project basis after they finish boot camp training?
Yes. So, right, yeah. So each fellow is assigned a project, but a project could be anything from, what is the landscape for this specific invention look like, to, tell me about the landscape, competitors, commercialization potential, help me define a marketing strategy. Like, all of those things could also be just one project. The idea is that they each get new projects, maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks. So they get assigned a project, they complete it in 2 to 3 weeks, and then they get assigned another project.
So we just got a follow-up to that. Are the fellows compensated?
Yes, they are compensated. So they're not, to be honest, they're not compensated well. But some of that, from my perspective, is intentional. So we get a lot of requests to have volunteers, and for certain reasons we're not allowed to accept volunteers. But what I actually think, we don't also want to necessarily make the internship about the compensation. And so for me, I viewed the compensation as a nice to have, but not the primary reason that the fellows should be interested in participating. And so that's why the pay rate is somewhat low.
Thank you. Okay, the next question we have about how many industry professionals participate in this event at Harvard, and how do you get them to participate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'd say, each session is given by one of our industry professionals, and then the panel has probably 4 or 5 people from industry or the venture capital community. Having been at the University of Illinois, which was a much different ecosystem than being here in Boston, I can fully appreciate that question. I think we're lucky to be in this vibrant community where we have a network of people who are local and willing to participate in an event like this. I don't necessarily know if I have good advice if you're not in one of these hotbeds of activity. It might be easier for an institution that's not located in a hub like this to have kind of maybe a series where you could attract a visitor and host, one session maybe once a month or something like that. Because I agree, it would be difficult to do.
You touched on this briefly, but can you explain Guppy Tank Jr.?
Yes, sorry. So we have an event here that we put on called Guppy Tank, and Guppy Tank is supposed to be somewhat similar to Shark Tank, but the tagline is "No sharks in these waters." So we get a panel of people from industry and the venture community to listen to presentations from teams with technologies here at Harvard, and they provide constructive and helpful feedback on how to think about translating those technologies into like a company or making them more suitable for partnering. So the Guppy Tank Jr. was supposed to be a play on that where, typically in a regular Guppy Tank event, the teams are more experienced and have thought about their projects to a much more thorough degree. Whereas here in the boot camp event, they've had maybe 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours to work on their project and pitch it to an audience. And so it's even more friendly than the Guppy Tank, the regular Guppy Tank event. But again, it's just a number of panelists from the venture and industry BD community who provide feedback on the students' non-confidential summaries that they've prepared for the case study that they've been working on in the boot camp.
Great, thank you. We have one last question. You had a lot of really great statistics that you showed as the feedback from the boot camp. How did you survey the students? Was it while they were at the boot camp at the end? Was it during, following, through email? What types of mediums did you use to survey them as well?
Yep, we just used SurveyMonkey and we sent it out right after the boot camp ended. So we tried to tap into their comments immediately while the boot camp was still fresh in their mind.
Great. Thank you. Those are all of the questions that have come in from our participants. Anne, I don't know if you have any other follow-up for Jen?
No, I think that this was fantastic. Jen, thank you so much. The questions, thank you to our members for some great questions as well. I think this provided all of us a really great idea of how the students can, share their ideas and their innovations and set them up for success, both working with the Tech Transfer Office and as well as getting them prepared for what's next for them in their careers. So fantastic. I hope everybody has enjoyed it. Again, thank you to Jen Rice. And for any, follow-up questions, et cetera, feel free to reach out to us. And I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.